I mean, this was... You got away with this, didn't you, really? Because you were quite young to play the role.
Yes, I was young.
I mean, you in particular, because he was quite a bit older, isn't he?
Well, in Carry On, Jeeves, which is the very first appearance of Jeeves in Woodhouse, a darkish, youngish chap stood in the doorway, is the only physical description you get of Jeeves. But as Bertie Wooster said of him, although he is not a butler, if it comes down to it, he can buttle with the best of them. But a butler was literally a bottler, he looked after the cellar.
John Gielgud in Arthur.
Yes, he played... was he a butler or was he a valet? It's hard to tell. A man, my man. You know, they used to say, my man. The fifth Duke of Portland was so relied on his valet that when the doctor visited, the doctor would stand outside the room, the valet would do the rummaging around and call out what he saw. I'm just inserting my finger into his grace now. I would say it's a sort of yellowy-blue colour. The doctor would say, that's a very bad sign, or a very good sign.
All 5 of his grace's testicles are in order.
It is a most bizarre thing. Many years ago, I was asked, as I'm sure you've been asked, to address the Oxford Union.
They have asked me, but I always imagine that they just asked me along just so they could go...
No! They love you. They'd also just...
We have an entertainment. Ask him something.
We've got... Make the crowd done.
We want someone from Essex.
He doesn't know.
Take my cloak.
No. I went, and I remember this quite, even for Oxford, astonishing young man in a wing collar who was wearing an extraordinary manner, and whose name was Jacob Rees-Mogg, and he was the son of William Rees-Mogg, who had, for a time, been the editor of
he's
Times.
An MP now, isn't
and
he?
he's now an MP, and he's... we may have a picture of him. There he is. You're never going to mistake him for an Essex chav, are you? Surprisingly...
River dancing.
He's tall, isn't he? He's bigger than the houses.
He is very tall. That may be a parallax effect, I'm not sure. But anyway, he was infuriated when leafleting the streets of central Fife, but the fact that he was mocked because he was assisted by his nanny. What was so extraordinary was his response. His response was... Well, I do wish you wouldn't keep going on about my nanny. If I had a valet, you'd think it was perfectly normal.
Man of the people.
I've had a tweet relationship with Jacob Rees-Mogg.
Is he a Twitter friend?
Well, I think I don't know if it's actually him, but he quotes to me Anglican psalms.
That's very like him.
I can't think there would be anyone who wasn't him who would want to do that.
It does seem a very strange pastime, I have to say.
He's stopped talking to me now, though, but he did for a while.
He's very busy running the country with his nanny and his valet.
Well, I think the nanny was doing the
Mary
tweeting
Poppins
for him.
and Jeeves are helping him out. That's all we need worry about. Thank goodness. All is well in the world of Jacob Rees-Mogg, and I'm sure he's a lovely man. Anyway, Jeeves was a valet, not a butler. What use is a sheep in a gold rush? Yes.
Can be cold and lonely on those prairies.
Yes, that's the first thing that would come into a
Huddle for warmth,
mind.
Stephen. Huddle
together for warmth. No,
Yeah.
well, the gold rushes aren't always in cold countries,
Is that what? Hang on, the Lord is your shepherd, and you give him a cold night on his own. He might shaft you.
I believe his rod comforts you.
They didn't teach me anything at theological college about this. It's not that much.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise.
Would you filter stuff through wool, thereby extracting the golden
The
oil?
man is right on the money, quite literally. It's exactly what you do. Exactly what you do. You take the fleece and the water runs through it and it leaves behind the flecks of gold, and then you dry the fleece and shake them out. It's as simple as that. It's a very good way. Better than panning. And there are people who believe, indeed there's one man who wrote a book about it. His name is Tim Severin. He wrote a book called The Jason Voyage. He's one of those people who believes a lot of Greek myths, a lot of myths generally, are based on originally true stories that have become exaggerated. And he believes the Golden Fleece may be one such an example. Jason may well have taken a golden fleece that someone had been using for panning for gold. So, now, what are the Swiss planning to tidy up next? Those good old Swiss. Yes,
army knives, that's what I was going to say. Are they going to tidy them up because there's loads of useless things on them?
No, I know what you mean. Just to reduce the number of stuff on them.
Yeah, just to make it just a knife.
But they do actually have a plan to do some really serious cleaning, which will cost millions, but is, I'm afraid, very necessary.
Is it in space?
Yes. Well done, Alan Davis. What's the problem in space?
Too many old satellites.
Debris,
About.
space debris.
As soon as we started going up there, we started leaving crap everywhere we went. It's so human, isn't it?
Even if...
It's like a festival.
Even if it's a chip of paint, you have to remember it's orbiting at 18,000 miles an hour.
Well,
so it hits
eye.
something else, they shatter. So more and more shatter into smaller and smaller pieces, which makes it harder and harder to clear them up. So we're with the Swiss in space. They're attempting, technically, to find ways of clearing up this debris, which is a serious
Dyson.
worry.
You need a Dyson.
Well, you need one hell of a Dyson.
Dyson
why
would
the-
think of something.
Why the Swiss?
It's
Why
interesting,
have they
isn't it?
taken it upon themselves after years of not
you
joining
know-
in and
Maybe
stockpiling Nazi gold?
you know-
Why now they have some
I've got a horrible thought. It might be for profit.
Oh, they're not just a bit OCD.
I don't think... Well, it could be a mixture. Have you been to Switzerland? It is a very clean and tidy country. It was the first country I ever went to years ago. I was tiny, which had photoelectric cells in the urinals. And so when I left, it flushed, and I thought... And I heard a little click, and so I just went back and forth, and someone came in and saw me doing this.
That means, basically, that urinal, if it consents when you've gone to flash, it's a robot.
Yes.
It's like the debris in space. As soon as we create artificial intelligence, we abuse it sexually.
Anyway, moving on, sorry. Let me give you the information on this. The fact is, after 50 years now of space exploration, the Earth is surrounded by junk from old satellites and spent rocket casings and so on, all down to small pieces of wire and chips of paint, all hazardous to current satellites, on which our lives are beginning to depend. GPS and so on, and peacekeeping and all kinds of
Grinder.
things. Oh, Grinder, God, yes. What would we do without Grinder? There are apparently 480 million copper needles because there's some bloody stupid thing called Operation West Ford, which was an American project from between 61 and 3 to create an artificial ionosphere out of copper that they could bounce radio signals off. They actually wanted to seal the Earth. I mean, how mad is that? So that's left all that junk. Anyway, the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne has a project called Clean Space One. There they are in the snow looking... Actually, that's Telly Savalas' hideout on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Anyway, they will have a series of janitor satellites. They will manoeuvre alongside the unwanted object, grapple it with a claw, there you are, then dive into the atmosphere. So it's going to, first of all, grapple it with its claw. Ta-da!
Oh, you can do this on Brighton Pier.
Yes, exactly. And then it goes... The problem is that the actual janitor thing is also destroyed. They both burn up in the atmosphere.
So for every speck or needle, you have to send up a separate little old lady with a claw.
£27 million each
Well, that's
one
really...
of those. That's what I mean by saying...
You just need a shovey thing that shoves it into the atmosphere.
What about some sort of... I mean, I've admittedly haven't given this much thought, but some sort of Hoover? You know, some sort of sucking thing?
Giant funnel. You'd think a giant
does
funnel.
sucking work in the outer atmosphere?
There are
'cause
two
there's no
directions.
air?
There are two directions you want them to go in. You either want them to stop being in orbit and come in and be burnt up in the atmosphere, or you want to push them out into space, which is a bit loutish.
It's even more literary, isn't
Frankly,
it?
it is loutish. Yeah. We Brits have come up with a different solution at the University of Surrey, and that's a nano-satellite the size of a shoebox, and it contains a 25-square-metre solar sail. So when unfolded, this cube sail, as they call it, is driven along by photons from the sun, and it carries any junk and takes it out into outer space. In due course, devices like these may have to be built into anything that's ever allowed up into space again, must have on it something that will help with the problem. But that's the problem. At the moment, the Swiss have their $27 million machine. So there you are. Now, what would be the best planet in the solar system to take your annual holiday in? Or on? Yes.
Earth.
Absolutely the right answer, I'm frankly saying. I don't think there could be a better answer.
Well, the great advantage of Earth is that you can survive on it.
Yes.
So lovely on a holiday, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
To
To
just
breathe
live
air
through
again.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Hello.
Uranus,
Why Uranus?
because it would be much longer.
Ah, now there you're getting very interesting. It's about how long a year is or a season is.
How long is a Uranian year?
A Uranian year is 84 Earth years.
84.
But each day is only 17 hours, so again, it spins faster than us.
So how long would a fortnight be?
It's a very good question indeed.
17 times 14 would be a fortnight.
How long's a year on Jupiter, then?
A year is about 12 of our years, but it spins very quickly. So a day on Jupiter is only about 10 hours.
So you might not get a longer holiday the further away from...
And I think I'd need those things that go around your wrists so you don't get travel sick if it's spinning like that.
That's right. Jupiter is also entirely gas, which is not really very nice. The shopping and the sightseeing opportunities are amazing. A layer of black liquid hydrogen, 27,000 miles thick, crushes carbon into diamonds that are literally the size of the Ritz. So you could really get some serious bling from Jupiter.
Try to deal with that.
Yeah.
Sort of that a diamond the size of a hotel.
And another thing that's rather exciting is that it precipitates neon rather than water in the atmosphere, which creates brilliant, bright red rain. It's fabulous. That would be so pretty. So, but
it'd be lovely to go, wouldn't it?
That's there.
You don't want rain on holiday, though, do you, even if it's bunny?
That storm, that eye, as they call it, which is in the middle of Jupiter, is about 4 times the size of the Earth. So that's, you know...
So essentially, Jupiter's a nightmare. Because if your annual holiday, not only is it a shorter fortnight, it only happens once every 10 years.
Yes, that is true.
Very bad.
Venus, on the other hand, rotates incredibly slowly. A fortnight's break on Venus would last over 15 years. That's how long the days are.
But you need factor 980 there.
Oh, the weather is awful. It's clouds of sulfuric acid. The surface is hot enough to melt aluminium, so you need really thick flip-flops. And the atmospheric pressure is equivalent to being half a mile under the sea on Earth. The air isn't very fresh. It's mostly carbon dioxide. So it really is a bit... It's a bit like being in an Ibiza club at about 6 in the morning.
You'd only want a week there, wouldn't you? You'd only want a week.
You'd only want a week on Venus.
Years.
I think you're right. So, now I have a dubious theory about Alice in Wonderland for you, if you're quite interested.
A dubious theory from Stephen Fry.
Yes. Alice in Wonderland isn't a wildly imaginative children's fantasy after all. It's a bitter, satirical attack on Victorian mathematics. Dubious or not, visit aliceschmalice.co.uk to review the evidence and decide for yourself.
A dubious theory from Stephen Fry.
Well, I like that one, and I like that one a lot.
It's an interesting theory, and there's a book written about it. The fact is, as you know, Alice in Wonderland was written by...
Lewis Carroll.
Who was, in real life...
A dog.
Charles Dodge.
A dog? It's so right, the last letter was wrong.
It was a don.
A don.
A don.
Yeah. Don, that's what he meant. In other words, he was a fellow of an...
Autocorrect, damn you, autocorrect!
He was a mathematician at Oxford.
Oh.
And he was a very conservative, classical mathematician who believed in Euclidean geometry and things like that. And there was a new world coming into maths that would resolve in David Hilbert's famous questions and the Poincaré conjecture and Riemann's hypothesis and all the things that Alan Turing and later mathematicians
The invention of
devoted
number
themselves.
9, of course.
The invention
very controversial. I've never taken to it myself.
Squeezed it in between 7 and 10 and 8 and 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
8 came even later.
8 came later, that's right.
They needed it for the war.
Blind spot, so weird.
They needed it for bingo, I think. No, but the fact is, he didn't like the way that maths was becoming so extraordinarily abstract and pure and less to do with either symbolic logic, which was his particular subject, or, as I say, the beauty of plain geometry, which he loved. And so this particular author, Melanie Bailey, argues that the scenes, particularly the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, the encounter with the hookah-smoking caterpillar, and the meeting with the Duchess whose baby turns into a pig, all that sort of absolute nonsense, he thought typified modern mathematics. And most of all, he added in the latest story, the Cheshire Cat, who disappears leaving only a grin. It's a humorous way of making a serious point about the futility of abstraction. How can the cat leave a grin behind? The cat was brilliantly played in the Tim Burton film by who did the voice of the cat? It was superb. Oh, God.
Hugh Laurie.
Hugh Laurie, that's it. That's it. I knew it was someone good. -2,000 points. Anyway, Melanie Bailey, the author of this book, reminds us that his other works are painfully dull and moralistic or very technical works. In fact, Queen Victoria read Alice and loved it so much and said, "I do hope, Dr. Dodgson, that you will dedicate your next book to me." So he wrote a book called something like Problems in Symbolic Logic. to Her Majesty Queen Victoria. You must have read it and thought, what the fuck is this?
Queen Victoria bumper book of boring math. Happy Christmas, Your
Anyway,
Majesty.
she says, this lady Melanie Bailey, that Dodgson was most witty when he was poking fun at something, and only then when the subject matter truly got him riled. Whereas we think of him as just an absurdist, a kind of surrealist, as a nonsense, a master of nonsense. Anyway, it's nice to have dubious theories on our J series, and that's one of them. You can make your mind up yourself. Now, it's time for a jolly jape, this time involving lasers and balloons. What could be coming next? Here we are, and I've got my laser. This is one of these things they use. You know, I'm going to point it behind me, and we're using the smoke because it shows up the laser line. Can you see it there?
Yeah.
I'm deliberately, obviously, I keep shouting in my ear, don't point it at people's eyes. I'm not.
Don't point it at their fucking eyes! It's fucking dangerous!
The thing is, he knows he's the one who's going to be fired. There you are. You can see reasonably well that there is a laser light.
The lighting man, I go, ah!
Right. This is ordinary laser light, the kind you'd use to, you know, conferences to point on maps and all the rest of it. And I'm just going to press the laser here and... Oh! Whoa. And... Oh! Whoa. And... Oh! Whoa. And...
Green! Wow, cool!
Nothing. It's not popping, though. So, the black ones pop and the white one doesn't. Alan, you should have a... Beginning to make sense. I want you... Take your black marker, please, and can you make a black target roughly in the centre of the balloon? And I'm going to let you press the button as a reward if you do it sensibly. So...
Temptation to draw a cock and ball.
I know. A big black spot, so it'll work. So it's just there. And fill it in as black as you can.
Talk amongst yourselves.
That's right. You could, if you'd worked for Blue Peter, you'd know how to do that while presenting to camera.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, there you see, exactly.
I haven't done a cock and balls, and I know you're disappointed.
No, they're not.
It's the back of Stephen Fry's head.
Yeah, that's it. It is actually not unlike. OK.
Will that do it, you
I
think?
reckon that's black enough.
Black enough?
We know that black absorbs light and heat, and white, we know, reflects it. And we saw that the laser had enough energy to burst the black balloon. So all you have to do, just leave it in. It should be pointing in the right direction. Oh! Well done. Very enjoyable.
Victory. So what was Darth Vader thinking?
You see, the dark side will always lose. Yeah. Absolutely right. Well, that brings us to the scores, amazingly. And finally, and there is no minus score. Ooh. Wow. In first place...
Patronising bastards. I've had points before.
In first place, aided by a first-class brain and, of course, divine assistance with 23 points is Richard Coles. Yeah.
So I'd like to give my points to the poor.
Oh! What a holy man of God. We're all booze from the atheists. We know he's only teasing. In second place with plus 13 is David Mitchell. Third place with 8 points is Sarah. Well done, Sarah Merton. And it's not minus. In last place with 0 is Alan Davis. That's all from Sarah, David, Richard, Alan and me. Thank you, good night, and be excellent unto each other. Bye-bye.
More comedy coming up next this evening here on BBC HD. Lisa Tarbuck is the guest host of Never Mind the Buzzcocks. Next.